Where the boots stopped, the silence learned to walk. The place I promised it they never return to. I never thought it they call me back it. Not after everything. Not after what I left behind, especially not after who I left behind. But the road has a way of calling back on itself when you stop pushing so hard against it. In this morning, with the weight of Agi in my knees and a stillness in my chest to recognize, I found myself standing at the edge of the same path I once marched away from. Each looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I was just taller. Oh, maybe memory stretches things still fit the shape of our grief. The trees were still there, bent, watching, the kind that hold secrets in their bark. The wind moved through them like a breath, familiar, but not kitschy, comforting, like someone whispering your name after decades of silence. The dirt road crunched beneath my boots, not the ones from the uniform, those are long gone. These were softer now, worn by years of walking in places that didn't ask questions, but the weight they carried felt the same. So many burdens outlived the boots that bore them. I stopped where the fence used to stand, the wooden posts now eaten by chimney, the wire fallen like a thread from an unraveling memory. Beyond it, the field stretched wide and silent. Nothing special about it. No monuments, no markers, just grass, just space, just ghosts. This was the place where the boots stopped, not because I fell, not because I gave up, but because something in me knew it was time to leave the fight behind and didn't know how to carry the silence that followed. So I left my boots righted, sitted them side by side like soldiers at attention, then walked away barefoot into the dusk. I told myself it was symbolic, that I was laying something though, but really I just couldn't bear the sound they made when I walked. They echoed too much. Now, all these years later, I can still see the outline where they stood. It is strange. What the earth remembers, we think footprints fade, that time flattens everything. But if you know where to look, if you listen, some impressions never leave. They root themselves beneath the soil. They become part of the land. I stepped forward slowly, not cautiously, reverently, as if the silence itself might shatter if I moved too quickly. In there each was the small dip in the earth, the faint impression of something that once was heavy, and now is gone. I knelt beside it, my breath fogging slightly in the early light, and I placed my hand over the spot where the heel had once pressed deep. It was cold, still, and yet it thrummed, not loudly, but enough, like the land was remembering me too. I sat there for a long while, let the wind pass through my coat, let the silence grow roots in my chest, let the memory rise not like a wave, but like a fog, slow and creeping, until everything in me was covered by it. And I whispered, without knowing why, "Am you ready? Till walk again, not till run, not till march, not till flee, just walk." But this time, with the silence beside me not trailing behind like a wound, I rose slowly, knees aching, and looked out over the field. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. And I knew this would be the place to stay for a while. Not till reclaim, not till retreat, but till return. Not till who I was, but till what I left and finished. And maybe, just maybe, till what had started walking the moment I took those boots off. The sound of something that stayed behind. You didn't build a fire that first night. You didn't need one. The cold wasn't the kind that bites, it was the kind that watches. It sat around me like a familiar coat, heavy but known. I sat with it, hands tucked into my sleeves, back resting against the same tree I once leaned against when I couldn't carry the weight of my own name. It felt strange to be back, not painful, just unfamiliar, the way an old song sounds when you hear it in a different key. The boots weren't there anymore, of course. You didn't expect them to be, but the space where they'd been, that was sacred, not because of what each marked, but because of what each remembered. You didn't bring much with me, a satchel, a journal, a scarf. You didn't know they still own, an old watch that ticks only when each feels like each, a tin cup, in silence, mostly silence, not the kind you hear. The kind that follows you, the kind that settles behind every spoken word and waits for the moment you really stop pretending you don't hear it. You didn't try to sleep, not really. I lay there on a folded blanket, eyes half closed, listening, till the wind dragged itself across the grass. Every so often, you did think I heard footsteps, not loud, not rushed, just enough to make the air shift. But when I sat up, there was nothing. only space, only stillness, only the absence that had learned how to move without making itself known. E it didn't scare me, it comforted me, because I think deep though I wanted the silence to learn how to walk, because maybe then you wouldn't have to carry it alone anymore. At dawn, the light was soft and low, the kind of gold that doesn't announce itself, but simply arrives, gently pulling the frost from the grass. I stood, stretched my back, and walked the perimeter of the field. There were no signs, no paths, just the instinct to move, and it was enough. About halfway along the far edge, I found it something I hadn't remembered. A wooden chair, weather-worn, half-buried, its legs uneven from chimney. A single strap of faded leather tied across the back, fluttering in the morning air. It didn't sit, not yet, but I ran my hand across the top and felt the grooves, scratches, letters, maybe, carvings from someone who once needed to leave proof they existed. And suddenly I wondered, was this always Eddie, or had it arrived after I left? Oh, had it always been meant for my return? The chair faced nothing in particular, just open field. But when I stood behind it felt directed, as if it was aimed toward something not visible, but deeply known, like a memory that had learned to hold its shape in the air. I turned away gently and walked on. There were no graves in this field, but everything about it felt buried, not with sorrow, with care, as if the land itself had agreed to keep watch over what we couldn't name. When I reached the spot where the first came in the break in the fence, the twisted while half buried in frost, I saw something new. A single boot print, fresh, not mine. It faced inward, toward the tree, toward the bench, toward the place I had once removed mine. I knelt beside it, heartbeat slowing to a strange rhythm. I hadn't felt in years, a mix of memory and presence, a tug of the past in the ribcage of now. Someone had been it, recently, and not just passing through. They had stepped into this place, not around it, not away from it, but into it. In the boot print, it matched the shape I remembered leaving. Only this chimney, it didn't stay alone, because beside it, faint but visible, was the imprint of a bare foot. Not two, just one, like someone had walked with only half of themselves ready to be seen. E sat down in the frost, didn't move, didn't speak. I let the question form slowly. What part of me is still trying to come home barefoot? Because maybe this isn't about the boots anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe it's just about what we remove when we think we done fighting and what we unknowingly leave behind. And maybe the silence that walks it in now is not my silence alone, but every footstep ever left and finished. The things we leave behind without knowing. I don't remember the exact day I stopped writing letters, but I remember the last one I never sent. It sat in my pocket for months, folded and folded, until the creases became its own kind of map. The ink faded, the words blurred, and yet I kept it there like a secret talisman. Not because I was proud of what I wrote, but because not sending it felt safer than the silence that would follow. I wonder now if I buried it, tore, alongside the boots, alongside everything else I was afraid to carry into whatever came after. This morning, I woke before the sun. The frost hadn't lifted yet. The tree stood tall above me, its branches reaching out like arms that had learned not to ask for anything. The bench where I sat yesterday had a new mark in the snow beside each, a clean carve, as if someone had rested a canteen or maybe a book. But when I reached out, there was nothing there. In that when it started, not a sound, but a rhythm, a pulse in the air, like a breath, not mine, something older. I sat still and listened, and I realized something strange. The silence wasn't empty, it was layered, like a story that had been told 1,000 chimneys, in 1,000 different ways, each voice resting on top of the one before it. Not to cover it, but to add to it, in somewhere in that stack of quiet, was me, my version, my presence, my unfinished sentence. I walked till the far edge of the field again, past the place where the lone footprint had appeared. It was gone now, melted or taken, or perhaps never really there, but its echo stayed in my step. I felt it, in the way the ground received me, not like a stranger, but like someone returning to a room they once built and forgot. Then I found it, not on purpose. A metal tag, rusted around the edges, half buried in the mud. not mine. It had no name, no number, just a single, etched word, almost erased by time. Stay. That's all it said. No context, no punctuation, but the word held me there longer than I expected, because I had spent most of my life doing the opposite. Running, marching, escaping, surviving. Even healing felt like a movement, like a forward was the only direction that counted. But this word, stay, it wasn't a command. It was an invitation. I closed my eyes and held it in my palm. Cold metal, thin, sharp around the corners. And I felt, for the first time, that this field, this forgotten space, didn't want to be passed through. It wanted to be stayed in, even if only for a while, even if only in spirit. It may be that that's what the boots meant. All those years ago, not surrender, not defeat, but a moment of choosing stillness over struggle, of leaving behind the sound of marching so silence could begin to learn its own way forward. I carried the tag back to the tree and placed it on the bench. Didn't say a word, didn't need to, because this time, the silence answered first. A breeze lifted across the field. It moved differently than before, not aimless, not cold. It passed through me, like a memory wrapped in breath. And I thought, maybe this is what ghosts are. Not the dead, but the parts of us we left behind, the places that mattered. And maybe, just maybe, when we return, they don't haunt us, they guide us. The bench that never asked for anything. There is something different about the way time moves out here. It is not slower, it is quieter. Not empty quiet, but the kind that fills you without needing to explain how. I spent the entire morning just sitting, not doing, not remembering, just being. It felt strange at first, like my body had forgotten how to exist without the urgency beneath it. The bench is older than I thought. At some point years ago, maybe even decades, someone had carved into the side, not deeply, just enough to leave a mark. Nothing forgets you, Eddie. The letters were worn, faded, but is still legible if the light hit them just right. When I read them, my hands instinctively move to my chest, where the silence used to sit heavy, where the metals once lay beneath layers of regret and applause. Nothing forgets you, Eddie. Not your footsteps, not your failures, not your softness, not the things you didn't say because you didn't know how, not the boots you left behind because the sound of them reminded you of everything you lost. It all stays, but not to punish you. It stays to say, I was real. You were real. This happened, and you survived it. I leaned back into the bench and let the wood press into my spine. It creaked gently, not out of complaint, but like a whisper, like a chair that had held 1,000 backs, each one carrying a story that had never been written, though. That's the thing about places like this. They don't need journals. They added the journal. They hold memory in the way the grass grows slightly thinner where someone once knelt. In the way the air changes when a certain shadow crosses a certain corner at a certain time of day. I spent the afternoon following a path that didn't exist. Just movement, one step after another in the direction the wind seemed to favor. It led me to a small hill on the edge of the field, bare, but not empty. At the top, I found it, a small pile of stones, carefully stacked, not randomly, intentionally. I didn't touch them, didn't need to. I knew what they meant. In places like this, people don't build monuments, they leave markers, quiet ones you only find if you slow down enough to see them. I sat beside the stones and let my mind wander, not backward, not forward, just open. I thought of the letter again, the one I never mailed. I could almost feel it in my pocket again, crumpled and warm from the heat of regret. I had written it after the second year, after the third sleepless week, after the moment I looked at my hands and no longer recognized them as mine. The letter had no address, just a name, a first name, no salutation, just, I'm sorry didn't come back the way I left. That was the first line, and I never managed to pass it. Because how do you explain to someone that the world you carried home in your lungs didn't match the one you left behind? How do you tell someone that silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the weight of everything you didn't say? I think about that a lot out here. What it means to be silent. What it means to listen to something that doesn't speak words. Maybe that's why this field matters. Because nothing it demands to be understood. It just is. Like me. Like the version of me that walked away from those boots not knowing where he was going, only knowing that he couldn't take another step in the same direction. I stood. Finally, he walked back to the bench. The sun was lower now, and the light filtered through the branches in slanted lines, like the air itself had been folded. And that's when I saw it, on the bench, beside the spot where it sat every morning, since I returned. A feather, not large, not bright, just placed, deliberate. It hadn't been there before. I know this, because when you sit with the same silence day after day, you notice even the smallest shift. I picked it up, turned it between my fingers, and I smiled, because even if no one had left it, even if the wind had brought it felt like a message. You he not alone, Eddie, not your quiet, not your slowness, not your remembering. This bench, this field, this silence, they never asked me for anything. They never required me to change. They only invited me to stay long enough to become someone I could finally sit beside. The day the wind carried my name back to me, the wind changed today, not direction, in tone. It moved through the trees with a kind of rhythm I hadn't heard before, less like rustling, more like murmuring. Not voices, not exactly, but patterns, familiar ones, like footsteps you forgot you took, or a name someone used to call you by, the one that didn't have rank stitched to it. I stood at the edge of the field again, same place where the fence used to run, the one I swore I'd never cross in reverse. But this time, I didn't look out to see what was beyond. I looked though, and there it was, a small line in the dirt, a track, not fresh, not deep, but unmistakable, a thin groove, like something had been dragged or maybe traced by something, light and certain. If for some reason I don't fully understand, I whispered out loud, "Is that you?" You didn't expect an answer, but the wind blew just then, gentle, cool. I carried a dry leaf across the field until it stopped, right where I stood. A single yellow maple leaf, cracked at the stem. Hey, I know how this sounds, but it landed, face up, and written across it, as if burned gently into its veins, was a single word, or what looked like a word. My name, faint, almost too faint to believe, but it was there. Not my full name, not the one in the registry, not the one they barked during whole call, the name from childhood, the one my sister used to whisper when she was afraid of the dark, the one my mother sang when she braided my hair before Sunday service, the one I forgot I had. I stared at it for a long time, and then I sat, right there in the dirt, and I let that name settle in my lap like a story I thought was lost. I remembered things I hadn't let myself remember, not the war, but before. The kitchen, window, the sound of rain on the tin roof, the way my father's boots rested side by the back door, never rushed, always ready. And suddenly, I missed a version of myself that had nothing to do with medals, or loss, or survival. I missed the me that used to wait for the mailman just to see if a postcard would come. The me that once believed silence meant safety, not aftermath. The me that stood in this very field as a child, not yet knowing what would happen. 80 decades later, I think the land remembered him before I did. Maybe that's what this all is, a place where different versions of myself agreed to wait, knowing one day the need to sit with them, not to explain, not to apologize, just to be near. I stayed at the spot until the light changed again, until the shadow stretched long and slow. And the leaf with my name fluttered once more and rolled off into the grass like it had done its job. When I rose, I felt something different in my spine. Not pain, not stiffness, but alignment, as if something that had been tilted for years had quietly snapped back into place. I walked to the bench again. The feather was gone, but its place was a stone, small, flat, warm from the sun. I picked it up and turned it over, expecting nothing, but on the underside, scratched faintly, barely readable, were the words, "You stayed." No punctuation, no name, just that. I held each against my chest for a long while, and let my eyes fall closed. In the wind, for the first time since I returned, didn't feel like it was moving past me. It felt like it was moving through me, carrying something with it, something I no longer needed to hold alone. The day I realized nothing was waiting, yet everything was stewed. There was something strange about watching the same sun rise over the same tree, day after day, e still finding it different. The light isn't always the same. The silence doesn't sit in the same corner, e you begin to notice that even stillness moves. This morning, I rose before the sky changed color. E didn't sleep much, not because I was restless, but because there was something about the quiet last night that felt too full to close my eyes to. I kept listening, not for danger, but for memory. In memory, it tones out, makes a sound of its own. It doesn't echo like footsteps or ring like gunfire. It pulses, softly, like breath on the inside of your ribs. I walked out toward the bench as the first light broke over the field. The tree above it had big and till change buds on the ends of its branches. Tiny ones, hard to notice unless you were looking, but they were there. And something about that moved me more than I expected, because even after everything, life was quietly continuing. It wasn't waiting for permission. It wasn't demanding attention. It was simply becoming. I stood beneath those budding branches with the strange awareness that it, too, was doing the same. Becoming, not something new, not something better, but something softer. In that softness, I heard the sound of boots again. Not loud, not sudden, but distinct. They were not mine. I didn't tone immediately. I let the air settle. I let the silence ask first. Only then, slowly, I turned toward the sound. There was no one there, just a faint line in the grass, as if someone had passed moments before. A small indent, a crushed leaf, a shift the way the light leaned toward the ground. I followed each, not far, just a few paces. Then I found the chair again, the one I hadn't sat yet. But this time, there was something on it. A folded cloth, no knot, no symbol, just fabric, old, familiar. When I picked it up, I recognized the stitching along the edges. It was the handkerchief I used to carry in my left breast pocket. The one I had lost the day I laid my boots though. I had searched for it once, convinced it had slipped from my coat, or been taken, or forgotten somewhere on the trail. But it was folded, clean, resting like it had been waiting for this exact moment. I held it to my face without thinking. The scent was faint, but it's still there. A mix of lavender and menthol, and something inside me uncliched. Not dramatically, not painfully, but like a door easing up after years of rust. So I sat. For the first time, I sat in the chair. It didn't creak. It didn't resist. It welcomed, as if it had known all along that eventually I would return not just till the place, but till the seat, till the stillness, till the version of myself that needed to stop performing memory simply be it. I don't know how long I sat there. Time didn't seem to pass the same way. I watched the sun rise, and fall, and in between, I remembered things I hadn't granted myself access to in decades, like the laugh of someone who died too early, like the feeling of my own name before it was shouted in drills, like the shape of silence before it was filled with echoes. I wept, not because I was broken, but because I had been whole all along and didn't recognize the form it took. In that moment, I said not to the wind, not to the past, but to myself. You didn't leave anything behind. You simply gave parts of yourself to the earth. And now, it is giving them back. I believed it. For the first time, I let myself believe that I was not waiting for anything anymore, and that nothing was waiting for me. Because this wasn't a place of waiting. It was a place of witnessing. And today, it witnessed me, fully. Finally, there are the places you carry even when you've convinced yourself they've been forgotten. They sit at the bottom of your breath, in the pause before you speak, in the way your hand hovers over a doorknob like it's waiting for permission. I think this field, this bench, this tree, they were never just out there waiting for me to return. They were inside me the whole time. They were the quiet space between what I showed the world and what I never said out loud. This morning, before the frost melted, I took my chimney walking, not toward anything, just through. I no longer felt the need to reach a place. I think I was becoming the place, a part of it, not just someone who visited, but someone who belonged to it, not by ownership, but by offering. I had offered my weight, my silence, my footsteps, my stillness. In return, it was offering me something it didn't yet have a name for. By the edge of the field, near the roots of a bent tree I hadn't noticed before, I found a tin box, small, rusted. Someone had placed a stone on top of it, probably to keep it from being taken by the wind. I looked around not expecting anyone, but still instinctively scanning for a sign that you wasn't alone. And then I crouched and lifted the lid. Inside were scraps of paper, some folded, some torn, one burned around the edges. They weren't addressed, no names, no dates, just words, phrases, bits of leaves. I waited to use a she never wrote back. I saw his hands shaking, knew he wouldn't come home the same. I lied you when I said he didn't remember. I dreamed of the sea every night, he hated the sound of water every day. In one, barely legible, stained, half erased, said simply, "Me too." I sat down on the cold earth, he let the box rest in my lap. Each notch felt like a heartbeat, I'd forgotten how to hear. Not because I didn't recognize them, but because I had spent so long training myself not to listen. Here they were, unclaimed, unexplained, judide. They reminded me of how memory works. It is not linear. It doesn't arrive in full. It comes in fragments. Pieces that don't always make sense until you stop trying to force them into a single story. You didn't add anything to the box. Not yet. But I held it close for a long while and whispered a quiet thank you into its lid before setting it back, just as I found it. I placed the same stone back on top, not to keep it hidden, but to honor how it had waited. The rest of the morning passed slowly. The light shifted. The birds moved differently. I noticed a second bench across the field, farther than I'd ever walked since I arrived. Something about it felt deliberate. I hadn't seen it before, or maybe it hadn't shown itself yet. These things have their own timing. I walked there. One step at a time. No rush. I stopped twice, not from fatigue but to close my eyes and listen. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It moved like a companion, not trailing behind, not ahead, just beside me. It no longer filled the space left by noise. It was the space. When I reached the bench, I didn't sit immediately. I placed a hand on the backrest, warm from the sun. And then I noticed something carved into the wood, not a message this time, but a name. My name. The full one. The one I hadn't said out loud in years. And underneath it, barely visible, you were always going to call me back. I sat, not because I was tired, but because I had arrived. I looked out over the field, now familiar in the way a face becomes familiar after months of seeing it in dreams. I remembered the first day I returned, how distant everything felt, how much of me was still armored, still marching, still refusing to feel without filtering. And now I could feel without panic. I could sit without the face. I could exist without proving. I had no answers, no grand revelations, but I had presence. In this place, at this time was everything. I placed my hand over my chest, not to check for anything, but to feel the rhythm, the steady beat of a heart that had learned how to walk with silence, not against it. In that essay when I whispered something I hadn't dared to say before. Me stewed, not a confession, not a plea, just a truth. In the wind kind, slow, warm moved through the grass like it believed me. I spent most of the morning watching the light move. Not in a poetic sense, I mean literally watching it shift from one blade of grass to the next. There is a kind of stillness that comes when you stop demanding something from a moment. When you let the hour exist without measuring it. That's what I did today. I let the sun tell this story, not me. In that silence, I noticed something that hadn't occurred to me before. The field breathes, not like lungs, like memory, slow, gentle, full. E vi come to understand that this place doesn't hold time the way a clock does. It holds it the way a tree holds rings, quietly, layer by layer, not asking to be counted, just waiting to be noticed. Around midday I wandered toward the edge of the woods behind the bench with my name. There was a path, faint but real. I realized I had avoided it since my arrival. Not out of fear, out of reverence. Some places feel like they only open when you're ready. Today, it opened. The trees were thin at first, scattered, but as I moved deeper, the canopy thickened and the sound of the field disappeared behind me. In its place, leaves cracking underfoot, a breeze that moved like an old friend brushing past my shoulder, the occasional creak of a branch adjusting to the weight of memory. I didn't know where I was going, but I didn't feel lost. It was as if the path knew me better than I knew it. Then I found the clearing, perfectly huge, almost impossibly so, like it had been carved intentionally into the woods by hands that remembered geometry as a form of prayer. In the center, a stump, flat, smooth, polished by time. It didn't look like it had been cut down. It looked like it had chosen to stop growing upward. I approached, slowly, sat down, in for a moment. I imagine I was at a table, not the kind with chairs and meals and small talk, but the kind where you place things you've carried too long. So I did. I took off my coat. I took off my boots. I placed them beside me on the ground, carefully. I sat there barefoot, letting the cold earth press against my soles, reminding me that I was still alive. Not in theory, not in survival, in presence. Full, rooted, undeniable presence. I don't know how long I stayed there. Long enough for a small bird to land nearby without fear. Long enough for the breeze to shifting return. Long enough to stop you waiting for something to happen until realize that it already had. That I did something I hadn't done in decades. I spoke to someone who wasn't there. Not aloud, but fully, completely. I pictured his face. The one I couldn't save. The one I still saw in flashes when my eyes closed too long. I pictured the way he laughed, the way he never finished his coffee, the way he folded letters like they were maps to places he never intended to go. I said, I carried you longer than I carried myself. I think I am ready to let you walk beside me now, instead of inside me. You didn't ask for forgiveness. You didn't offer an apology. We were past all that. What I offered was space, in silence. In breath, I stood, put my boots back on, slower this chimney, not like armor, like memory, like a song you not to protect yourself, but to remember who taught it to you. I left the stump behind, but not empty. I left something there, not physical, just a part of the weight they mistaken for identity. When I stepped back onto the path, you wasn't lighter. I was steadier. I walked back toward the field. In the moment I crossed the tree line, the light greeted me differently. It caught the edges of my shadow and softened them. In the wind it didn't blow. It bowed. I knew, without needing a reason, without needing a sign, that I had entered the next part of whatever this was. Not a journey, not a healing, just a continuation. A gentle, grounded unfolding of what it means to exist in peace with what you can't change. And so I walked, back to the bench. Back to the name carved by hands I didn't remember being mine. I sat again, not to rest, to witness, because something was happening in the way the air touched the grass. I didn't want to miss it. Some mornings begin before the light arrives. You don't notice the difference until the sky tells you you've been awake longer than the world. That's how today began, not with sound, not with thought, with breath. The kind of breath that fills your lungs with something older than air. Something like memory, or forgiveness, or both. I rose before the birds, before the dew released its hold on the grass. I walk not with purpose, but with rhythm. The kind that comes when your body no longer marches, but listens. There is a difference between movement and motion. One pushes forward, the other responds. Today I responded, till the trees, till the cold. Till something just beneath the surface that hadn't spoken yet. The bench was there, as always, waiting, but never asking. You didn't sit right away. Instead, I looked at it, truly looked. The cracks in the wood, the way the bark behind it curved like a shoulder. The shadows gathered beneath, not to hide, but to rest. I noticed the smallest things, a snail trail along the base, the hollow where a single acorn had settled, the soft imprint where my hand had rested yesterday. It was then I realized, the bench wasn't aging, I was. The bench simply received. It didn't resist the weather or fight the fading. It accepted and in doing so, became mod itself. And maybe, quietly, that's what I was learning till the tour. I placed a single stone on the armrest. A habit now, not a ritual, not a superstition. Just acknowledgement that I had returned, that I had stayed, that I was still willing to sit with what came up, even if it came without words. The field looked different today, not in shape, in tone, like something had been forgiven each, or maybe within me. The wind didn't carry as much weight, the silence didn't press as hard. And for the first time, I noticed the color of the grass again, not dull, not washed out, but alive, quietly, undeniably alive. I walked toward the western edge, where the fence once stood. Nothing remains of it now, except the way the grass still grows a line of memory etched into the land itself. I stood there a long while, let the breeze wrap around me like a shawl, let the sun climb slowly through the bare arms of the trees, and then I heard it, music, faint, distant, impossible, but there, not a melody I recognized, not from childhood, not from the war, but something simple, a few repeating notes, like a wind, chimes tuned by memory instead of metal. I turned toward the sound, either tucked between two trees. Where I had never looked before was a small wooden box, open, inside, a music mechanism, the kind you turn by hand, but it wasn't moving, it had no crank, no spring, yet the sound continued. I approached slowly, afraid that getting too close would silence it, but it didn't. It played, as if it had always played, as if it had waited until I could hear it. The notes were soft, worn down like stones in a river. They didn't cry, they didn't rise, they stayed low, gentle, like the voice of someone remembering something without needing to relive it. I listened, not just with ears, with scars, with the skin beneath my skin. I knelt beside the box and whispered, "Yemi estuary." The music changed, slightly. A new notch appeared, not brighter, just deeper, more grounded. I don't know how long I stayed there, but I know when I finally stood, you wasn't alone, not in the haunted sense, not in the literal one either, but something had shifted. The field behind me looked warmer, the sky had opened just enough to show its softness. The bench, the old one, had something new on each, a ribbon, tied gently around one of the armrests, blue, faded, frayed. I walked back slowly, holding the moment like a capsule photo spill. The ribbon wasn't knotted, just looped, as if to say, nothing, it is trapped. It didn't touch it, didn't need to. So many things are placed for the eyes, not the hands. As I sat again, I understood something I hadn't been able to before. This field wasn't just a place of memory, it was a place of return. I wasn't the only one who had come back. I didn't speak a word today, not out of sadness, not out of silence that stings, but because there was nothing I needed to say out loud. The air carried what mattered. The light finished my thoughts before I could form them. I moved through the hours like someone walking through a house they grew up in, not to search, not to fix, just to remember what the walls once heard. The ribbon was still on the bench this morning. It hadn't moved. The breeze touched it, but never untied it. That felt important, like so many things once offered, aren't meant to be taken back. I sat beside it as the sun rose behind the tree. It cast long shadows across the earth, not cold shadows, but familiar ones, like outlines of people I used to know, standing just out of view, watching without needing to be seen. And then I heard footsteps, not boots this chimney, lighter, uneven, not cautious, careful. It didn't turn right away. I listened instead. Each step closer, the air thickened, not with fear, with memory. I could almost taste it, like the smell of rain on an old uniform, or the warmth of a fire you built with hands still shaking. When I finally turned, I saw her. I didn't speak a word today, not out of sadness, not out of silence that stings, but because there was nothing I needed to say out loud. The air carried what mattered. The light finished my thoughts before I could form them. I moved through the hours like someone walking through a house they grew up in, not to search, not to fix, just to remember what the walls once heard. The ribbon was still on the bench this morning. It hadn't moved. The breeze touched it, but never untied it. That felt important, like so many things once offered, aren't meant to be taken back. I sat beside it as the sun rose behind the tree. It cast long shadows across the earth, not cold shadows, but familiar ones, like outlines of people I used to know, standing just out of view, watching without needing to be seen. And then I heard footsteps, not boots this chimney, lighter, uneven, not cautious, careful. e didn't turn right away. I listened instead. Each step closer, the air thickened, not with fear, with memory. I could almost taste each, like the smell of rain on an old uniform, or the warmth of a fire you built with hands still shaking. When I finally turned, I saw her. The morning after she left the box, the world felt quieter, not empty-held, as if everything around me had paused in reverence, not for her, not for me, but for the space between us that had finally been named. E didn't rush till the bench today. I let the sun guide my steps, let the frost dissolve beneath my feet before I walked over it. There was something ceremonial in my pace, though it hadn't meant it that way. I think that's what happens when you stop walking towards something and start walking with something instead. The box still sat on the bench where they left it, closed again, like it knew it had said all it needed to. I sat beside it, ran my hand gently over the top, and just breathed. For a while, I didn't think about anything. I didn't remember. I didn't anticipate. I simply existed between one breath and the next. In that space, I felt her again. Not the version of her who had walked away the night before, but the younger one, the one I remembered from before we knew what we could do till time. There was a moment, long ago, when we had danced in the rain, not till music, but till defiance. We had no umbrella, no plan, just arms outstretched, the eyes wide open. I remember thinking we were untouchable then. I remember how her laughter could catch through the cold, how her presence made me forget we were even wearing uniforms. I remember this sound of boots, not marching twirling, this sound of leather against wet stone, creating rhythm without command. The day came back to me now, not in images, but in sensation. Each lingered long after the wind returned. I stood up and walked back toward the edge of the woods, but this time, drawn till the stump of the hidden trail. I walked along the tree line until I reached the stream it passed only once before. Each was shallow, barely moving, but clear enough to show reflections even in morning light. I crouched by the edge and looked not at myself, but through myself. The face that looked back wasn't older or younger. It was simply mine. And for once, I didn't flinch. I didn't wish to rewind or retouch. I just looked. I nodded. There, in the cold water, floated a single ribbon, not the one from the bench, not one I had seen before. It drifted, slow and stubborn, refusing to settle, refusing to be still. I reached in and caught it, careful not to disturb the surface too much. It was pale green, soft till the touch. It smelled faintly of cedar. I didn't know who had placed it there, or if it had arrived on its own, carried by the wind or memory, but I tied it around my wrist not tightly, just enough to feel and stood again. As I walked back, the sun had risen high enough to cast warm light through the bare trees. In the clearing, I saw something else new, a lantern. Old, rusted, lit, sitting at the base of the tree. I approached slowly, heart steady, breath calm. The flame inside didn't flicker with wind. It stood tall, sure. I knelt beside it. He placed a hand near the glass. It was warm, but not hot. Alive, but not consuming. And tied till the handle with fraying twine was a notch, folded mentimes, thin fromage. I unfolded it. One line. You didn't fail. You survived. No signature, no name, no date, just truth. It took everything in me not to weep, not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. In belief, when it returns after years of absence, arrives like a flood behind a door that has been bracing for collapse. I sat down in the grass beside the lantern and read the line again, whispering it slowly until the words lost shape and became feeling. I closed my eyes. I remembered something I hadn't let myself recall in decades. The sound of my own voice saying, "I am afraid." Not in battle, not in pain, but in love, in vulnerability. I had said it to her once, long ago, on a night we knew might be our last together, and she had replied, "Then say it louder, so the world knows he is still alive." I hadn't said it since, until now. I am afraid. And the wind didn't answer, the trees didn't move, but the flame inside the lantern flared once high, bright, bold, and then settled again, calm as before. I picked it up, held it in both hands, and walked back across the field with it. Past the bench, past the place where I buried my boots, past the trail. I carried it toward the eastern hill, where the sun now lingered like it didn't want to leave. And there, at the top, I found a circle of stones I hadn't noticed before, each one marked, not with names, with symbols, a feather, a gear, a teardrop, a star, a coin, a candle, 15 in all. I placed the lantern in the center, careful not to disturb the alignment. Though I didn't understand it. And then I sat, not on a bench, not on a stump, on the ground, among the stones, among the symbols, among the silent. I think that's what they were waiting for all along. Not a soldier, not a survivor, but a witness, someone willing to carry the quiet with open hands. And so I did. As the light dimmed in the sky softened, I closed my eyes and said nothing. It was enough. That night, I didn't sleep the way I used to. I didn't drift off hoping to forget, nor did I lie awake cataloging all that had been lost. I simply rested, eyes open for a time, then closed, then open again. Not because I was restless, because I was still learning how to be at peace with the quiet. There is a rhythm in this kind of stillness, one that doesn't come from exhaustion or escape, but from reverence, as if every breath knows it as being received by something larger than lungs. At dawn, the frost was light. The trees were still. The bench looked the same, yet something felt different. You wasn't coming to reach as a place to sit anymore. I was coming to reach the way one returns to a person who waited without asking questions. I sat gently, like I didn't want to wake the memories sleeping inside the wood. My hands rested on my knees, my feet flat on the ground. I didn't need to move. The earth was already moving beneath me. The box was gone, the ribbon tore, but in their place sat something new. A notebook, worn and thick, its pages crinkled from time and weather. I lifted it with both hands and opened till the middle, not the beginning. I didn't need a starting point. I needed a continuation. In there, scribbled in unfamiliar handwriting, we carried more than we could, and still we stand, not to forget, but to feel. I turned the page. Another entry, different pay, different hand. I returned till turn 1, only to remember who I was before the orders drowned my name. Page after page, not stories, not confessions, just fragments of truth. People like me, people not like me, saw me broken, saw me rebuilt, all returned, all writing because silence, while sacred, sometimes wants to be witnessed. I closed the notebook without adding to it. Not yet. Today wasn't about what I could offer. It was about receiving, listening, letting the pages speak into my bones. And they did. I stood and walked till the southern edge of the field, a place I hadn't explored fully. There was a slope. There, gentle, leading though till what once might have been a garden. Stone borders still held the shape of old beds, and among the weeds, I saw signs of life. A wildflower blooming through frost, a vine wrapping around a broken spade, the remains of a scarecrow that no longer needed to guard anything. This place hadn't been forgotten. It had been left alone. There was a difference. I crouched beside a patch of disturbed earth. Something had been buried recently. A small wooden tag poked through the soil, weathered but legible. For the one who left, and for the one who stayed. No names, just truth. I let my hand rest on the mound, not to pray, not to claim, just to remember what it feels like to touch. What has already let go. I whispered, "Ye me both." Then I sat, right there on the ground, in the middle of what used to be someone else's garden. I watched the vine play with the long grass. Every movement reminded me of something I had stopped noticing, the gracy things that have no destination. The way leaves they see even when no one sees them. The way frost traces the outline of forgotten tools, turning rust into silver. The way the earth holds everything without asking if each is worthy. I stayed there most of the afternoon. No need to rise, no urge to speak. When the sun began to dip again, I returned to the clearing with the 15 stones. The lantern was still lit, the flame smaller now. I sat beside each and took out the green ribbon from my wrist, laying each next to the base like an offering. Breeze passed through and made the flame flicker, but it didn't go out. It never did. There was the lesson. Some lights weren't meant to burn bright. They were meant to stay, to hold, to guide, not blind. Then I did something I hadn't done in decades. I took off my boots again, stood barefoot among the stones. I began to, no sonho em particular, just a sound I once made long ago when the war was still a rumor. E hop was still loud. A low, steady that rose from my chest and settled into the air like smoke from a fire that refused to die. I don't know how long I stayed like that. But I know I wasn't alone, not because someone walked up behind me, but because something in me stopped hiding. And when the stars came out, I didn't wish on them. I thanked them for showing up. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up not with a jolt, not with confusion, but with clarity. The kind that arrives when you no longer expect something to change, you instead notice what has always been. I was still on the ground, barefoot, among the circle of stones. The lantern had gone out during the night, but not in loss, in grace. Like a final bow after the curtain has fallen, the morning mist was soft. Nothing rushed me. Even Chimmy felt like it had paused to stretch its limbs. I rose slowly, stretching muscles that now understood slowness not as stiffness, but as awareness. My boots lay nearby. I looked at them for a while. Then I picked them up, carried them in one hand, and walked barefoot back toward the bench. The ground was cold, but it welcomed me. I could feel each pebble, each root, each dip in the earth. And strangely, I didn't want to lose that connection. I was used to hiding behind leather and laces. Now, I was listening with the solace of my feet. At the bench, a new object awaited. Not left on top, but leaning gently against the side. An old photograph in a wooden frame. The image was blurred at the edges, faded by time and weather, but the center was sharp enough to pierce me with US. A group of 7, smiling, not in victory, not in pride, just smiling, as if, for that moment, we had forgotten where we were, or why we were there. We were simply being present, alive, together. I traced each face with my eyes. 3 of them were gone. I had buried 2. 1 I had never found. 1 had never come home in the first place. E 2 I hadn't spoken to me over 40 years. I hadn't thought I deserved to. But seeing the photo it didn't bring back shame. It brought breath. The deep kind of inhale that pushes tears into your eyes, not because you sad, but because you no longer afraid to feel. I sat with each in my lap and let the memories rise, not like waves crashing in grief but like a soft tide returning to touch the shore after a long storm. There were stories in those eyes, none of them finished, but none forgotten either. And I realized, finally, that remembering them wasn't a burden. It was a form of love. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need a monument or a speech. Just space. Just Chimmy. Just one breath given willingly. Later that day, I walked north past the edge of where the land turned from field into stone. A steep slope led down to our ravine, the only seen from a distance. They never dared go there before. But today felt like the right day. As I stepped carefully along the edge, I noticed the sound changed. Not louder, deeper. The echo of each step lingered longer, as if the land itself remembered everyone who had ever walked it. At the bottom of the slope, a narrow path wound through thick brush. I followed each without hesitation. The air was cooler, denser. I walked with boots in hand, still barefoot. Not out of ritual but because it felt right. The path led to a small stone wall, crumbling but proud. Beyond it, a tree grew at an angle, its roots exposed on one side like veins reaching back into history. Beneath the tree, a wooden chair. Just one. No plaque, no initials, but carved into deep bark above the chair. Letters uneven but deliberate. We returned. I sat down without question. It didn't matter who had placed it there. It mattered that it had been placed. A gesture. An invitation. A quiet declaration that not all things must be explained to be understood. As I sat, the breeze carried scents. I hadn't smelled years tobacco, old wool, oil from a weapon long since disassembled. None of it was real, yet all of it was. The mind knows when to unlock its cellars. And sometimes, healing is not about forgetting. It is about turning on the light in the room you locked shut and letting the air in. I stayed there until the wind shifted. And when it did, I felt each a presence. Not behind me, inside me. Not heavy, not loud. Just true. It was him. The one who didn't save. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Because now I understood. I had carried the weight of a ghost not to honor him, but to punish myself. He had never asked for that. He had only asked to be remembered. not as a wound, but as a life, a real one, a full one, with songs and jokes in crooked teeth, with letters half written in daces never danced. So I stood, and for the first time, I said his name, out loud, till the wind, till the tree, till myself, and then I said mine, till joined his, two names, alive again, not in body, breath, the name lingered the air long after I spoke it didn't echo like in the stories it settled, slowly, softly, as if the earth itself had been waiting to receive it again, saying it aloud didn't shadow me, it didn't sink me into grief, it lifted something not from my shoulders, but from my ribs, from the place where the quiet had lived too long without breath. I stood still beside the tree and pressed my hand till the carved words, Eddie, we returned. I thought. Yes, I did. I finally did. The walk back to the field felt different. The same trees, the same stones, but you wasn't tracing old steps anymore. I was walking as someone new, or maybe someone whole. A version of me that no longer avoided the places where his name used to echo guilt. The version of me that could carry memory without bleeding. I passed the small wooden gate near the garden beds. It creaked as I opened it, and the sound reminded me of laughter old, unexpected, unrehearsed. I let it swing shut behind me, not as an end, but as an agreement. At the bench, the notebook still waited. I opened it again, in this time. Knew it was time to write. I didn't think about what to say. I didn't edit. I didn't rehearse. I let the pen move as if the page already knew the truth and only needed me to unlock it. I wrote, I carried your name in silence because was afraid of what it would say about me. But today I learned your name isn't my punishment. It is my permission, till live, till remember, till return, not just Eddie, but till myself. You added not the shadow I walk with, you added the light I finally let in. I signed only my initials, nothing more. The rest was unnecessary. I closed the notebook and placed it back where I found it. And for the first time since I arrived, I felt like it didn't tell this place anything. Not because it didn't care, but because I had finally offered everything that was mine to give. That afternoon, the sky turned silver, not dark, not stormy, just silver like the world had been dipped in reflection. I walked slowly till the edge of the eastern hill, carrying the boots in one hand and the photograph in the other. The stones were still in place. The ribbon was gone, the lantern empty, but the feeling was still there. That soft presence that speaks with no voice and answers with no words. I knelt beside the stones. My knees sank into the cool grass. I placed the boots down gently, not buried this chimney, just resting. Beside them, the photograph. Then I sat. I waited, not for anything specific, just for the moment to pass through me. And when each did, each brought something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not the kind that comes after answers, but the kind that comes when you finally stop needing them. As I sat there, I closed my eyes and let my senses take over. The smell of grass is still damp from the night, the faint rustle of trees, the warmth of my palms against the earth, and underneath each all the sound of breath, not mine alone, but ours, the collective breathing of those who had come yet, those who had stayed, those who had never left. And then I heard a new sound, a voice, soft, uncertain, behind me. Is it alright if I sit with you? I turned. A young man, late 20s, maybe 30, civilian clothes, hands in his pockets, shoulders Stacy. I nodded. He sat slowly and sure at first, then settled. We said nothing for a while, just stared ahead at the boots in the photograph. After, some time, he said, you wasn't sure I defined it. This place. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. He continued, my grandfather, he used to talk about this hill, but only once, said it was where everything stopped, where he could finally breathe again. I looked at him. What was his name? He smiled, tight, same as mine. And there it was again, that thread, that invisible connection between chimney, memory, and presence. This place wasn't just sacred because of what had happened. It was sacred because of who had returned. He pointed at the boots. Whoa, those yours? Yes. You carried them all this way? I nodded. He asked nothing more. I respected that. We sat in silence for a long time. And before he left, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded cloth. Inside, a metal, old rusted at the edge. He placed it gently next to the boots. I think he the one teach it. He nodded again, and then he stood, looked once more at the circle of stones. He walked back the way he came. As the light began to fade, I looked at the three items before me: the boots, the photograph, the medal, and for the first time in my life, I said goodbye not to the people, not to the pain, but to the weight of having to hold it all alone. I stood, and I walked down the hill without the boots, without the photograph, without the need to prove anything anymore, just me, barefoot, breathing, home. I didn't return to the hill the next day, not because I couldn't, but because something in me said it was time to let the land hold what I had placed there. I woke with the sun peeking through the fog, the familiar silver light tracing soft edges around everything. I sat by the window of the small cabin near the edge of the woods, the one claimed but that always seemed ready for those who needed a roof but not a door. I sipped my tea in silence. No news, no radio, no ticking clock, just breath, just the scent of pine in old pages, phone books no one finished reading. I thought about walking not toward the bench, not toward the stones, but somewhere new. I followed a trail I hadn't noticed before, one that curved gently east and seemed to know exactly how much I could carry that morning. It led me past frost-covered grass and broken branches, through a thicket of trees that let light through, just enough to make you feel held but not watched. The path didn't end, it faded. In that's where I stopped walking. I sat on a fallen log, cold against my spine, and stared into the stillness. I don't know how long I stayed there, but I began to feel something I hadn't dared name a long time: contentment. Not the loud kind, not the victorious kind, the quiet one. The one that arrives when nothing more needs to happen in order for you to be alright. That day, no one came, no ribbons, no letters, no medals, and yet, something was blooming inside me. I could feel it. Not a resolution, not a closure, something softer, a blooming that doesn't have to be seen, that doesn't need a witness to be true. When I returned to the bench at sunset, the notebook was gone, so was the photograph. And where the boots had been, there was only a patch of warm earth, not disturbed, not buried, just marked by presence. I sat anyway, because the bench wasn't about the things we left there. It was about the space we created by showing up. I closed my eyes and let myself remember not the battles, not the names, but the ordinary things. The quiet coffee before a mission, the worn-out song someone always made while cleaning their rifle, the time we got soaked running back from a checkpoint and couldn't stop laughing because our boots made a ridiculous squelching sound with every step. I let myself feel that again. There was the war tour. There was the part I had forgotten to carry. And now, finally, I had. I was before the light fully faded. I whispered to the wine, not goodbye, not thank you, just, I'm steward. Because that's all I ever needed to say. The boots may have stayed on the hill, but I took their silence with me not as burden, as blessing. Later that week, someone new arrived. She was older, alone, wore a headscarf with edges torn like paper. She didn't speak. She just walked slowly through the field, sat on the bench, and placed a single paper crane beside her. Then she left. I saw her. It didn't approach. It didn't need to. She knew. We all do, eventually. This place doesn't need names. It doesn't even need memories. It just needs someone willing to stand still long enough for silence to speak. I stayed. A few more days. No particular reason. Just to see the frost arrive one more time. Just to hear the crows pass overhead. Just to sit at dusk with nothing in my hands but breath. When I finally packed what little I had, I left a notch tucked beneath the bench. Nothing long. Just this, where the boot stopped. I learned to stay. I didn't look back. Because you don't have to when you've actually arrived. I walked away slowly, letting the wind move through the trees one last time. Letting the memory of all I had once carried settle not in my shoulders but in the ground behind me. It would bloom again, maybe in petals, maybe in footprints, maybe in silence, but I no longer needed to know how, because finally I trusted that it would, and that was enough. If you had one place to return to, not to fix anything, but just to remember who you were before the noise, where would it be? Shed your answer in the comments. Let your silence be heard.